Hey everybody, I'm Sabrina Piccini and welcome back to my channel, Your Friend in Real Estate. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that's happening quite regularly in this kind of crazy market, which is buyer cancellations under contract. One thing that you're going to learn about me is that I pull my examples from things that I've actually been through with buyers and sellers. Of course, I read a lot of news articles and things to build my knowledge, but for any future examples that I'm about to share, it's from a real life situation that I've been through. So in this case, about 3 years ago, I was working with a seller. I listed their home in DeBerry, a beautiful two-story home, almost brand new. It was only about 2 years old and they wanted to sell. We ended up getting a buyer within about 4 days for asking price. And we went through the inspection period, the appraisal period, and everything was perfectly fine until closing day. So of course, on the morning of closing, I get a call from the buyer's lender letting me know that the buyer is no longer able to qualify for this home purchase. So then they tell me that the buyers prior to closing ended up buying a motorcycle and brand new furniture, which of course took them out of the qualification limits because their ratios had changed. So what relevance does this story have? Well, because the buyer defaulted on the contract, the seller had every right to keep the buyer's entire escrow deposit. And unfortunately, the buyers fought back with the sellers, demanding that they get at least 50% of their deposit returned. But according to the contract, because the buyer was in default of the contract, the seller had every right to keep the entire escrow deposit, but the seller ended up agreeing to split the deposit 50-50 with the buyer so we could cancel the contract and get back on market. In my career, this was one of the most extreme examples. However, in today's market, this is not uncommon for this practice to happen. So my goal today is to break down parts of the contract so you as a buyer can understand what your rights are and how you can keep your deposit protected by following the contract. The first and most obvious period of time is, of course, the inspection period. This gives buyers time to thoroughly inspect the home. If they discover something that they're not comfortable with, they can cancel the contract before the inspection deadline and receive their entire deposit back. It gives buyers the opportunity to make an informed decision before they move forward. The next part of the contract that protects a buyer while going through the process is the financing contingency period. The financing contingency protects buyers while they're securing a home loan, but it's not automatic. Buyers have to do their part by applying on time, submitting documents promptly, communicating with their lender, and making a good faith effort to get approved. Here's a pro tip. If your lender needs more time, work with your realtor to request an extension of the financing period before it expires so your contingency remains in place. But if, despite your best efforts, financing isn't approved within the contingency period, this protection allows you to cancel the contract and receive your full earnest money deposit back. Here's another form of protection for a buyer, the appraisal contingency. The appraisal contingency helps protect buyers from overpaying. If the home appraises for less than the purchase price, the buyer may renegotiate, move forward, or cancel the contract within the required timeframe and recover their deposit. Now, there are, of course, more addendums and more parts of the contract that can protect you as the buyer and your deposit, but these are the most commonly used ones. Now, buyers, as long as you're within the timelines and terms of the contract, you can consider your deposit protected as you move forward. So here's something I do want you to understand, that these timelines are not unlimited. The body of the contract is going to have dates and terms that you have to follow. And then, of course, if you happen to cancel outside of those dates, you can consider your deposit at risk. So let's talk about when a buyer defaults on the contract. So basically, you're not holding up your end of the contract. So here's what a seller can do if a buyer defaults on the contract. Option number one is they keep the buyer's entire escrow deposit for any of the time lost while they've been taken off market. Both sides cancel the contract and go their separate ways. The second option is that instead of just keeping your deposit, the seller can go the legal route and try to force the sale to happen anyway. So if you're trying to cancel a contract outside of your inspection period or appraisal contingency period or any valid reason to the contract, you just have to consider that your deposit is completely at risk. At the end of the day, this information is not meant to scare you. It's to help you stay informed while making smart real estate decisions. I hope you found this information helpful, and I really appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.